Okay, so we talked about
Requirements.
What is next?
The magic.
Magic. This is where the work happens.
This is where the work happens. Well, there is a lot of work going into this, as I think we already made clear before that. But yes, the next phase is where manufacturing, configuration, putting the thing together happens.
So what are some of the things that go wrong in this phase?
You close your door on your IT vendor and you expect it to just magically happen.
So if your IT vendor goes away for 6 months and you don't hear from him, you have a problem.
More likely, yes, in the end, because you have no idea what actually they're building behind that closed door.
So we're talking about some kind of incremental process check.
Process check, progress check. You still want to make sure that how well they're doing and progressing. Were they able to build it as quickly as they thought they would be, right? Do they still think that they would be able to cover the full scope? Maybe they found something that they're not quite sure how it needs to be done, or maybe there's been some challenges in building what's been requested. There needs to be an open communication throughout the project.
So how do you do that?
A lot of that would depend on what kind of methodology your vendor is using, but there are definitely multiple ways. There's an opportunity to either slice the features and maybe incrementally increase the capabilities of the system, but start showing something to the customer early on to get the feedback, to get the validation that that's actually what they were looking for. I don't know, when you're building a robot, you can start with the head, then add the body, then maybe add one arm to it and a leg, right? Maybe in the next iteration, they can start moving, right? So, what can the vendor show you that you can get a glimpse of and say, yeah, that's exactly what I expected, versus this arm looks weird, it doesn't fit the body, or it doesn't operate the way I expected it to operate. Maybe you expected it to be able to grab something and it's missing a thumb.
So do you involve your users at this point?
Maybe the ones that are the closest. It's always a good idea to have a core project team, because you cannot involve the whole company. That's just not realistic. Maybe pick a few people that would stay with the project and be your core group to interact with your IT vendor and go from there.
So what will happen if the vendor will come over and show you your robot arm and it's missing a thumb? What's usually happens in that case?
Well, you'll start with the conversation with your vendor and say, well, can we please add a thumb, because it's kind of important in your particular project. And there could be multiple scenarios. Your vendor can say, yeah, sure, no problem. We can absorb that in our current project plan. It's not a big deal. We will quickly fix it, and there you go. There could be chances where your vendor says, well, it's too big of a change. I cannot quite accommodate it in either the timelines or the budget. And then it's a conversation. Do you absolutely have to have that thumb? And are you willing to wait or pay for it more? And our previous phases that we were discussing, the requirements gathering and the original scope of the project, would be extremely important here, because in extreme cases, vendors will go back and say, well, this is what we agreed to. Can you please show me where thumb is in the scope of the project? Where did we specify that that arm is going to have a thumb?
Or not just fingers?
Or not just fingers, yes. So terminology is important, the verbiage is important. So this is a great example of, if you didn't get the previous phase right, it may bite you here.
So what do you tell to the business owner that would say, I'm not technically savvy enough to specify this in a proper language? It can be called a thumb in this software, but it can be called, like a big finger in another software. How does, for the business owner, for the company that is not an IT vendor or IT company, how can they even get there to to get those requirements right to get what they want or what they need?
So people that are writing requirements down are specially trained people. Usually, not everybody can do that. Yes, pet peeve of mine. The business analyst is not a generalist. Not everybody can do that. And there are tips and tricks and techniques on how to get this right. Now, business doesn't really have to have it, but on the project, it's important to source the analyst to get the requirements right and to help you through that. It's in your best interest. Whether or not everything was fully documented, the requirements, the thumb, should really be more about the business processes and the business than the IT terminology.
So you would say that in this example, the requirement would be the 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 robot needs to be able to grasp
Objects, yeah.
object securely, and if the IT vendor can prove to you that the robot can do it without the thumb, you know what? Then they
That's
fulfill the
wonderful,
requirements.
yes. And it all comes down to conversations with your vendor around these disputes, right? And that trust and open communication is extremely important throughout the project.
And that's when it's super important to get your users in early so they can start seeing what's being built and they can start trying it on themselves.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a little bit sticky topic of resistance, the user resistance to the change, because I think that in this phase, when they start seeing things materialize, that's where resistance really starts shining, and it starts bubbling up to the surface. Everybody wants a change until the change changes them. So new system usually means more visibility. More visibility means accountability, and more accountability is resistance. It's
For some people.
for some people because I cannot hide anymore. I cannot get I cannot be in my comfort zone anymore. I have to do things new way, and the owner will see how much I'm doing and what I'm doing. So in the build phase, when you start showing those parts of the system to the users, you may be showing new reports, or you may be showing some new parts of the new process. Uh, they start seeing that, hey, I would be accountable for my actions, and everybody will see that. Is there any tips or tricks or techniques that you can utilize to mitigate this risk?
So, what can you? Well, first of all, I don't think it applies to all people. I think you would find still a lot good in the people that are not afraid of their actions to be visible, but you may get a subset of those, and what you may get more is just it's not the same that I'm used to. It's that pushing people out of their comfort zone, not necessarily exposing them, but just giving them something new and different, and that might scare them. Nobody likes change. Let's be honest with each other. Nobody likes to change. When your favorite spoon is not in the place where you expect it to be, you get frustrated. You do. Or if it's not the spoon that you like, and all of a sudden somebody changed the spoon on you. People don't like that, right? How to deal with that is show the spoons to them earlier, communicate that your spoons are going to be changed starting from this date. But what's more important is not just telling them the spoon is going to change, it's to tell them why you're changing the spoon, what is going to give to the organization. Hopefully, in somewhere in there, there's something that new spoon can give to people as well, that they're going to be using it, right? So communicating the background and kind of going back to that, why are we even doing this project and what we're trying to achieve with it, usually gets the job done. May still take a bit of time.
Maybe it's a double-handed spoon, whether they can eat with both hands, or maybe it's a spork.
Yeah,
Oh,
well, whatever that is, right? Whatever works for your business, there should be a reason to transition to it, that you should be able to communicate to your people so that it makes sense to them and they can understand why they're going through the inconvenience and push themselves out of the comfort zone into the new processes or tools.
I think it's a good segue to talk a little bit about testing, because again, testing is one of those things that also starts bubbling to the top during this phase, because if the process is done properly and we're doing this incrementally, then after each iteration, you really need to get your people to test
when it's ready.
part of, maybe it's even the part, maybe just to see one screen and say, hey, does this work for you? So this is extremely important to do throughout the process. So you will build on that buy-in that you got into in requirements phase. You're building on it by showing them, hey, you've requested this, you got that. Or we couldn't build it this way because our robot couldn't have a thumb because it's just not, the software is designed that way. So this is the workaround that we found that will do the same thing. Explain to them your reasoning behind it. Let them be your partners in the project, not your resistance. And that will help a lot with the success of the project.
Of course, yes. You want the people that will be using the spoon or the robot to see themselves using the spoon and the robot, to have a bit of time to try it out, to have an opportunity to see it and get familiar with it, to have an opportunity to say, oh, well, this short is too dark of a gray for me. I was hoping that it will be a little bit lighter. To have that feedback loop.
And at the end of this phase, you should have a global test. I like to call it a conference room pilot, where you bring everybody in a conference room.
Lock people and don't let them out until you're ready to let them out. They've done what you needed them to do. Yes.
Yes.
Feed them generously, give them lots of snacks and sweets to keep their energy going, but do not let them out of your sight until you've achieved what you needed to achieve.
Have a couple coffee machines going at the same time.
Yep.
100%. It's a little project in its own, because what you do during the conference room pilot is you test end to end all your processes. So everything that you currently do in an old system, you need to do it in the new system. So if there is a printout that needs to happen, you put a printer there, you make sure that the printout actually prints. Every single process, every single iteration of the process need to be tested several times, and that's your final check to make sure everything works. We usually like to have a log of all the processes that need to happen, order of this kind, return of another kind, and then you have pass or fail. There is really no other option. There is either pass or fail. And then at the end of the conference room pilot, you look at your passes, you look at your failures, and then you make a decision. Do we continue going, or do we do another conference room pilot after the bugs are fixed? Because all those failures, they need to be resolved. So maybe there are little small things, the field is not shown on the report, can be fixed after we go live. My recommendation usually is do not leave a lot of things for after go live, because after go live, you will have a whole slew of other things that you have to fix, and you'll need those precious programming resources or the vendor resources to fix those things. If there is no big things and you can go live, you can make a decision to go live.
I do want to step back a little bit for the purposes of our listeners. Just say that go live is the day or the activity when you actually start using that new technology. Let's start there. The other one, I think you slipped the wonderful term bug that all the developers love. Or sometimes we also call it a defect in the system. So it's something that doesn't function right. It needs to be fixed. And usually you do have a log of those. You do track the criticality of those things. So is it critical to be fixed before you can start using that product? Can it wait? How long can it wait? Or maybe it's just something that absolutely minor, and if there is time at some point it can be fixed, but it's really not important. And you're absolutely right. There needs to be that decision point at the end of this testing phase that we sometimes don't see, or people get so invested in the project and the timelines that they're saying, you know what, we have 5 critical defects still, but we have to implement tomorrow. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
As much as you are invested in the timelines, and you have to be realistic, and when you're looking at the results of the testing, to say, is it going to help me to go live, to start using this new product, or is it going to hinder my team and make things worse?
It is very, very rare to see the go live that does not have any critical issues discovered after the go live. So if you're already going to go live with a bunch of critical issues, that is not a good way to start, because they will be just compounding on the issues with the processes or with the bugs that will happen after.
Oh, you're not going to drive a car off the parking lot if you know that the wheels are not attached properly, are you? If you know.
But what if they are attached just a little bit, just enough to get me home?
But that's exactly what you're doing here when you're making the decision. Is the car ready to be driven based on what you know and the failures that have been identified and the problem that has been identified with the car? I don't know. Is it missing the hydraulic steering? Yes, it's missing it. Can you drive it? Well, yeah, you just need to be very strong. Is that okay for you and your team?
So to summarize, what are some do's that we need to see during this phase?
We said that it's not the phase when you lock your vendor away. You have to maintain the conversation. And you need to be having periodic checks on the progress. And it is critical to test the whole thing before you decide that it's ready to be used.
So you need to commit a lot of time to testing during this phase.
Like any other phases, it needs your commitment. The vendor cannot do it without you. Cut. No, not cut.
No,
not done yet.